Good morning. I'm Steve Shook, your moderator for today. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Monadnock Summer Lyceum with today's guest speaker, Reggie Harris. Before we get started, I'd like to thank today's musicians, Festival Chamber Music. Give them another hand, would you? For providing the music that we've enjoyed while waiting for the live broadcast to begin. Also, thank you to the Monadnock Community Hospital for generously sponsoring today's event, and to Eastview Farm for the beautiful flowers we have this morning. For many years, the Monadnock Summer Lyceum has brought outstanding world-class speakers to the Monadnock region to serve as catalysts to inform, engage, and inspire an active citizenry on national, local, global issues. Today's talk is being recorded and will soon be available as a podcast and as a video on our website, monadnocklyceum.org. Programs are rebroadcast on WSMN 1590 AM the following Sunday at 10 a.m. and on WUML 91.5 FM the following Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and the following Sunday at 3 p.m. As is the tradition for the Lyceum, after the presentation, our speaker will answer questions from the audience. Those present in the meeting house may write questions on the yellow card in the pew in front of you, and an usher will come around to collect them. And for those watching virtually, please submit your questions by using the live comments section under YouTube, or send them to our email, which is monlyceum@gmail.com. The Monadnock Summer Lyceum is supported entirely through contributions from our audience members. We deeply appreciate your donations, which may be placed in the glass bowls, in the church and in the parish hall. Those listening at home may make contributions at the website or by mailing your donation. Thank you for your support. In your pew, you'll also find a green card, and we hope you'll give us feedback on today's program and join our mailing list or email list. You can either mail the green card to us or drop it in the bowls, alone or with your contribution, to the sustainability of the Monadnock Lyceum. For those watching virtually, you may provide feedback on today's program, suggestions for next summer's speakers, make a donation, or join our mailing list, again, through our website. And following the program, we invite you to attend an informal reception in the parish hall through the door over here to my right. There you will have the opportunity to engage in further conversation with our speaker and enjoy cold drinks. Please respect social distancing. Thank you. In introducing our speaker today, Reggie Harris, I'm reminded of the quote, "Talking about music is like dancing about architecture." And far better than any words about Reggie will be hearing him sing. I first had the pleasure of hearing Reggie nearly 30 years ago as part of a Hudson River Sloop Clearwater concert. Pete Seeger and the crew of musicians were all taking turns backing each other up on our different songs, when suddenly, over to my right, I heard the most amazing harmony soaring up into the air. And when this singer stepped forward and let loose one of his own songs, his smile and voice filled the room with the joy and conviction of an entire gospel choir, one that also played folk guitar. I remember swapping cassette tapes with Reggie afterward, listening to his singing on the Steal Away album all the way back to New Hampshire. Eventually the tape wore out, but now I've got the CD. Reggie Harris has toured the world for more than 40 years, from concert halls to folk festivals, college campuses to elementary schools, He has delighted audiences of all ages with an amazing repertoire of freedom songs, spirituals, and storytelling. Reggie's recordings have received numerous awards, contributing to the national dialogue on history, justice, and courageous conversations on race and equality. A teaching artist in the Kennedy CETA program, he also serves as co-president and director of music education for the Living Legacy Project, which sponsors civil rights pilgrimages throughout the South and online education seminars worldwide. Reggie is also a featured artist in the Americans Who Tell the Truth portrait series by artist Rob Shetterly, which some of you may remember from the Mariposa Museum exhibit here in Peterborough last year. Now, please give a warm Manana Lyceum welcome to Reggie Harris.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, well, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Way down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Way down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, way down in my heart, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, everywhere I go, well, everywhere I go, well, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, well, this little light of mine, well, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, I'm not gonna make it shine, no, I'm just gonna let it shine. Well, I'm not gonna make it shine, I'm just gonna let it shine. Well, I'm not gonna make it shine, just gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Somebody say amen. I am so grateful and pleased to be here with you today, and I am truly grateful for the fact that I'm standing here today is the absolute and total example of hope and faith. Last night I was driving from a festival in Cabot, Vermont, and as it was, my car had been making a noise that I thought was something. And I realized again that I am not a mechanic, and I am not mechanically able to make diagnoses that one might seem to think would be easy. But that noise turned out to be my brakes. And I found myself on a road heading for a B&B that I had been gifted when suddenly I made a wrong turn and I found myself sitting in front of a very large house in their driveway, unable to move. And in that moment, in the darkness, I thought to myself, what now? This is the life of a touring musician. You're often on the road late at night and often hoping that you will reach that place, hoping beyond hope. And today we're really talking about hope. Finding hope in a 5-minute world. What a great theme. I found myself, however, in a center of calm, even though I had no real reason to be calm. And I called a friend and told her where I was, and then I called 3As and told them where I was, which was a bigger deal. And then I sat and I waited, and 4 cars went by, and I thought, well, it's going to be a different night. And then a 5th car came, and that car stopped, and a window rolled down, and a voice came out and said, "Are you all right?" And that voice belonged to a woman named Sabrina Brown, who is here today. And she and her husband, Fred Haas, are the reason that I'm here today in good shape. Because not only did they stop, but they made it possible for me to get my car taken care of and then retrieve a bag and opened a room in their house. And gave me grace and a perfect example of how hope comes out of nowhere. So I would, in this moment, like to ask them to stand as a thank you to them for so many. We live in a world where so many would suggest that it is filled with hopelessness. And I'm sure most or many of you reject that notion because we have in our lives experienced hope regardless of where we come from and regardless, the very fact that we are here in this room today has something to do with the delivery of hope. And so coming to you today, I want to spend some time talking about my own journey and how my journey as a person, a musician, an educator, a storyteller, a pilgrim on the road to possibility has consistently been shown that hope is not just something that we wish for, that it is an action that we participate in. We often think and we are portrayed in the world as something that we are hoping for this and we are hoping for that. And in essence, the world tells us that hope comes from certainty, that hope comes from the idea that there is something out there that we are trying to attain, that there is a goal that we are moving toward, and if we do the right things, we will reach our goal. And I think most of us know that's really not what hope is at all. Hope is a very, at times, uncertain enterprise, and yet it exists in a very real way. And as a musician, I have learned most of what I know about hope through song. And that is not a mistake, because I come from a community in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I come from a community that was part of the Black migration. My family migrated from Richmond and Culpeper and Ashland, Virginia in the early 1900s, and they came along with about 6 million other folks who were fleeing the South. we all pretty much know why they were fleeing. There's been so much and so much scholarship in the last 50 years to tell us about not only that community of people, the largest actually voluntary community of immigrants or migration in history. 6 million African Americans who began their lives in those southern states and of course in the institution of slavery. Slavery, where one person could own another in a nation that was founded on the principles of freedom. And yet this conversation that we've been having, this conversation that started long before certainly I was born. Langston Hughes said, "Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. With billowing sails, the galleons came bringing men and dreams and women and dreams." Those men and women were following actively the pursuit of hope. Some were free hands, he goes on to say, seeking a greater freedom. Some were indentured hands, hoping to find their freedom. Some were slave hands, guarding in their hearts the seed of freedom. But one word was there always, and that word was freedom. And so that active pursuit of hope came through devastation. Devastations that most of us in our 21st century reality can barely even imagine on any level, let alone to think that we experience what they did. However, as Maya Angelou, the amazing poet and elder, said, the comparison of one's suffering is in our lives useless because in one way, shape, or form, from wherever we come, we have been bought and sold. Can I get an amen? A polite one, but thank you. And so it was that I was raised in a community of people who brought their hopes and their dreams north from wherever they came, and they settled in the Nazarene Baptist Church, at least in my case, at Nice and Lycoming Street there in Philadelphia. Now, I say it that way because when I was a boy and we were in our Sunday school or our youth classes, that's how they taught us to say the name of our church. They said, say the name of your church like you're proud of it, and tell people where it is in case they want to drop by. I will guarantee you that nobody dropped by that church because I told them where it was. I was not a very good evangelist as a child. And I was not particularly happy about being there in the first place. Because, like most kids, I really wanted to be somewhere else. Maybe home watching TV. Or maybe at home just doing whatever. But my mother, Helen Harris, understood the power of example and the importance of community. She knew that her kids, regardless of them fighting her on every Sunday morning, needed to be in that church, surrounded by the community of saints who could mirror and show example to what was needed in a world that would not be kind. And so it was that I say often that my mother had a really good drug problem. She drugged us to church every opportunity. And it was in that church that I began to understand, in many ways, the essence of hope. Because these were folks who had been through something. These were folks who came through generation after generation of being denied, and generation of being told that they were shown in so many ways that they were less than. It did not take a rocket scientist to figure out that having brown skin in this nation was not an asset. But they had come through that and were going through that in the very active pursuit of hope and dream. They came north to the promised land, but they found that it was not the promised land. What they had heard about the North was not really true. It was different, but it was the same. But our ancestors, in so many ways, have discovered that themselves in each instance of the human experience. So what is it about that particular group of people that was different? Well, they translated that, and this is not a new thing, but they translated it into songs. And I was so thrilled to hear the musicians this morning playing excerpts from the spirituals. The spirituals, the sorrow songs, as Frederick Douglass called them. He said, the songs of the slave are sorrows of their heart, and we are eased by them as a heart is eased by its tears. They put all of that devastation and all of that pain into song, and they sang. Oh Lord, how come me? Oh Lord, how come me? Oh Lord, how come me? Well, I wish I never been born. They took my children away. They took my freedom away. They treat me so mean, Lord, and I wish I never been born. Yes, I wish I never been born. Steal away to Jesus, oh freedom. And before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave. The songs are so many, the canon of the spirituals are songs that struck the chord and allowed those folks to sing into their pain. But the magic of those songs is that they are not just songs of sorrow. They are also songs of liberation. They are songs that allowed people to acknowledge where they were in truth and honesty. Slavery was no joke. And it did not free them from the devastation of their situation. At least, it did not always free them physically. But it did provide a means of lift, of uplift, of finding a place to offload some of that pain and tension. And they did that also in community, because that's what they knew. They had brought that with them from Africa. They hadn't brought much. But like all human beings, they had history, culture, and tradition. And part of their tradition, their history, was to take that everyday experience and put it into song. And so, having offloaded and sung those painful songs, the spirit lifts ever so slightly perhaps, but it lifts. And so you are also now able to sing into a changing reality. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, so the world can't take it away. I heard that song growing up, and I know me and my friends, we thought, what is this joy that they have? And why are people trying to take it away? Well, that is the distraction of the world. Because they were telling us, without really telling us, that things were going to get interesting. And they were telling us that there was a source through which we could deal with that when the time came. Now, as a young boy and all of my friends, we didn't always understand the message. And we certainly didn't always understand how they could rise in but that also is why their services always seem to take so long. We would hit church, well, my mother would get us there at 9:30. Church didn't start till 10:30. And in the front, those old folks would be singing those old songs, and they would be singing them so slow. We had things to do. But there we sat, and we listened to them. But I was able to, in 2003, before my mother died after an operation, in that last year, I was able to come to some recognitions, and through my work with the Kennedy Center and also through my work with the Underground Railroad and through a variety of other entities and doing research into that time, those songs, how they came forward and what they did in those communities, I was able to thank my mother for getting us into that church, for getting us into that community, because it was a community of people who together shared the legacy of what they had been through. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod is the way that James Weldon Johnson put it in Lift Every Voice and Sing. And he talks in that song about hope. That hope is something active in the community, and we are not working on it as individuals, which is another place that I think we, in our present world, go astray. We center ourselves, and we have great encouragement to center ourselves on individual pursuits and individual focus. And that is not by any means a mistake. I have to remind myself constantly and remind others in my work that there are forces in the world that are very interested in dealing with us as solo individuals, as solo entities. It is not to our best interest. If you look around the world at what communities have done, what movements have done, you see that we are the beneficiaries of community and group accountability and group responsibility. And those folks put that in their songs also. They constantly talked about the I, but the we of community. That we are here together. We are singing together. We are standing together. We are marching together. Those songs that brought them forward on their journey were present there. And as those old folks sang those songs, we absorbed that into our bones, where they would sit until we finally began to figure it out. And of course, it took years. But I am happy to look in the mirror in these days and to see someone who now has to reevaluate just how old those old folks were. As I find myself traveling around this country and the world and singing these songs and writing songs that come out of the experience of that empowerment. They sang songs, and one of the other first songs that I heard was a song that also taught another lesson. And that lesson is that communities benefit from other communities. They benefit from observation. They benefit from the experience of folks sometimes who don't look or think like them, who don't share the same legacy or even perhaps the same belief system. This is the 200th anniversary year of the birth of Harriet Tubman. And Harriet, of course, born in Bucktown, Maryland, was born into a family of 9 brothers and sisters, a family that was separated. Her mother had the children in one place, her father was a few miles away. But they were part of a community that also sang, and Harriet absorbed lots of lessons from the community that she grew up in. And one of the things that she also very, very strongly took from her early years was the accountability and responsibility for others. And so it was that when she finally, at about age 21 or 22, decided that she had had enough of Mr. Broaddus and his insanity, and she was going to go forward and run away. And she made it to my hometown, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She made it there after getting help from people who worked on the Underground Railroad. These were not all African Americans. The Underground Railroad, one of the very first, actually the very first multi-faith, multi-racial, multi-ethnic, multi-generational movement of people in America. They were a small group of people, but they were abolitionists and others who decided they were slaves and free. They were those who decided that in this nation, founded on the principles of freedom, they were going to fight to make freedom a reality. And they would do that by sacrificing sometimes themselves, sometimes their homes, their churches, their synagogues, whatever they had to end this scourge. But those in bondage saw and heard the stories of a people who had lived long before them. They heard, when they were read from the Bible, stories about a man named Moses and his people who lived in a far-off land of Egypt. Well, they knew about Egypt because they were from Africa. And sometimes they were taken captive by people who had come from northern Africa, sometimes from Europe, sometimes they were sold into slavery by neighboring tribes. But in whatever way, they knew this information, and when they found themselves hearing these stories about these people who were in Egypt and in bondage thousands of years ago, and heard that there was a man named Moses who rose up and who identified his people and was made accountable. It's a fascinating story if you haven't read it. Moses stepped up and said, "Let my people go," and that rang a bell. And so it was, they began to fashion those spirituals, fashion those songs, and to tell those stories. Why? Because they were learning that this had been done. Yes, we are enslaved, but we are not slaves. We are people in slavery, and that can be changed. And how did they change it? Well, sometimes they did it by using their songs to not only give them the strength and the spirit to escape, but by doing what Harriet did and actually putting her feet in motion. And then once she made it to Philadelphia, receiving help from a Quaker in Wilmington, Delaware named Thomas Garrett, and receiving help from others on the Underground Railroad, and reaching Philadelphia and finding William Still, an African-American conductor and agent on the Underground Railroad, finding a community that took her in. She remembered a dream that she had had when she was just about 7 or 8 years old, of women who called out to her. Women in a dream who said, "Araminta," the name she was given at birth. "Araminta, come across." She looked to see a great divide. And she told them, at a distance, she could not come across. "It's too deep. I'm too young. I can't cross over." They continued to exhort her, "Araminta, come across." And they added the phrase, "Bring your people with you." She was called. She got to Philadelphia, worked for 2 years, and then heard that 2 of her brothers were about to be sold, and that community responsibility kicked in. It was to her family first. But she decided, against the advice of all, that she needed to go back. And so she retraced her steps back into slavery, going back to Bucktown, and there rescuing her brothers and their families, and eventually most, not all, but most of her family, including her mother and father. But along the way, she widened her perspective and took over 100 people who were not related to her. And she spread inspiration to other communities. And along the way, what did they do? Well, they hid, and they conspired, and they sang. Now, I know I don't have to remind you this morning that we're going to sing, but just in case, turn to someone near you and just look at them, smile, and say, I can't wait to hear you sing. As they were walking, they had to remind themselves that every day, since they could not carry enough water with them, that you were going to have to find a water source to keep this journey going. And they had to remind themselves that since they couldn't carry enough food, well, they might be able to steal some along the way, but they had to rely on what was there in nature. Maybe do some hunting or catch an animal that came to the water to drink. Water was going to be a very important conduit. It was also going to be something that hid them, because they walked through that water, well, they would cover their tracks and cover their scent from those slave catchers who were working so hard to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act. So they sang, wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water. We have no way of knowing exactly what they meant when they said God's gonna trouble the water, but we do know that that story came from the Hebrew scriptures. That when the folks got out of Egypt on the escape, on the run from Pharaoh, they came to the Red Sea and they stood there, as they say, beyond their captivity. They found themselves with no possible way of moving forward. But the story in the Midrash of the Hebrew scriptures says that there was a man who did not wait. He actively moved into hope. He believed in his heart that God was going to do something powerful, and so he, as the people waited, stepped off into that water and began to walk, up to his knees, up to his waist, up to his chest, up to his chin. The story says that when the water came up to his nose or thereabouts, that the waters miraculously parted. You can do with that story as you wish. But they tell that story every Passover, because the other important thing is to check in with your narrative, to dispel the distraction, and to renew your commitment to the larger community movement. So we're going to do this in call and response. I'll sing, who were those children all dressed in red? You say, God's going to trouble the water. Just like that. Maybe with a little more attitude. Let's try that. Well, now, who were those children all dressed in red? God's going to trouble the water. They must be the ones that Moses led. Well, who are those children all dressed in white? They must be the ones getting ready to fly. Said, wait in the water. let's sing that. Oh, wait in the water, children, wait. Wait in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. So we'll sing that chorus together. I know some of you know it, so take leadership. Well, now, who with those children all are dressed in blue? They must be the ones that made it through. Well, who with those children all are dressed in black? They never, 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 never going back. Sing it with me, say, wait in the water, wait in the water, children, wait in the water. I sing it over, say, wait in the water, wait, oh, children, now wait in the water, you know, gonna, oh yeah, I said God's gonna trouble the water, well, God's gonna trouble the water, you know, God's gonna trouble the water, say, God's gonna trouble the water. God's going to trouble the water. They were leaning back into the idea of Sankofa. Sankofa comes from a language in Ghana, the Twi language, which describes looking back or reaching back to get what we might have forgotten. And usually what we have forgotten are things that dispel distraction, simplicity, the connections that we make that don't have to do with excess, the connections of the heart, the mind being in a hopeful place that is open to grace and possibility. And so it was that I found myself on March the 9th, home unexpectedly, 2020. Something happened. I was actually performing on March the 8th at the St. Mary's School for the Deaf in Buffalo, New York, and I was supposed to do 2 shows there and a Kennedy Center workshop for teachers in the afternoon. After the first performance, which was fascinating, I hadn't really performed in a school for the deaf in a long time, and the connections that we were making really were quite remarkable that morning. I'd had the younger students, and I was scheduled to have the older students, but then the principal, the headmaster, came in and said that she had just gotten notice that 3 cases of COVID had been found, and they were going to suspend the rest of the day, send the kids home since they were from all over Buffalo. And I said, thank you, went home, and we all know what happened after that. The world went on pause, and the world went into terror. And the world went a lot of places. I found myself at home, sitting in the same living room that I had sat for months following another time when my life went on pause. In 1998, I started a journey that lasted for about 12 years. I went to give blood for a relative of a friend, actually a relative of my wife, and a letter came back from the Red Cross telling me that the liver enzymes made it, that were so high that it made it impossible for them to use the blood, and after a series of tests and more tests, it was determined that I had an autoimmune illness, and as they put it, in some number of years, this is going to kill your liver. You're going to need a liver transplant. And over the next 11 to 12 years, that process developed, worsened. And so it was that in 2008, I found myself on the 14th floor of the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. And there I was lying, hoping for a liver. Looking back, I'm absolutely and totally in awe of the fact that through that journey, I would not tell you that that journey wasn't terrifying, that it wasn't at times more than I thought I could bear. And yet, fortunately, in that time, I also had all of that legacy to lean into. Some of it I did quite by rote, but others was an action of leaning into the experience and understanding that when you are going through something like that, that all of those things that I've been talking about this morning become important. Now, the interesting thing is, the one thing that did not factor into this journey for me was the sanctity and the soothing nature of music, which was fascinating. But I also understood eventually that music had to be removed from my equation because it was distracting me from doing other work. The course of my life had piled up a number of things, and if I had more time, I would tell more of that particular story. But I will simply say that as I laid in my bed in that time, I found in silence a very powerful salve. I found that it was the silence of that moment, since music has been such a part of my life since I heard This Little Light of Mine at 3 years old and have that be the first song I sang, according to my mom. So the silence of that journey connected me to a community of support and also to questions that I could answer in myself about the choices that I had made. And the idea that if in fact I did get a transplant, that I would live into a different reality. And I am fortunate to say that on October the 28th of 2008, one of those surgeons walked into my room. I think she was a surgeon. It was somebody in a white coat. She came in and she said, "Mr. Harris, we think we found a liver, and we think it's a perfect match, and we are going to go check it out, and we'll be back. You have to accept it." And I did. And hours later, a nurse came in. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she came into my room, and she started from my bed, and then she went back, and she closed the door. She came, she said, "Mr. Harris, the transplant team called and they said they checked out the liver. It's a perfect match for you, and they're going to go ahead with the transplant, and they'll be here in an hour to tell you that this is going to take place. And when they come, I was not here. I did not tell you this news." She said, "You'll have to act like you're surprised." I said, "I'm a folk performer. I get surprised every day." That next day, I was wheeled into an operating room, 7-hour operation, and I woke up into a new reality, and that is when the music came back. But it did not come back the same. It came back with a new sense of commitment to a larger story. And that is what I've been living into since that very day. And so when the world went on pause, I found myself having survived some 10, 11 years of living into this new commitment, of living into what I like to say is a larger story. And part of this is fueled and shared in a poem that some of you may have heard. It's a poem that was written by Maya Angelou for Bill Clinton's first inaugural. There are so many narratives and so many stories that have been part of my journey. And they all collide in one place. Fortunately, they collide gently. But when I heard this poem, and I have used this so many times, I'm only going to read one half of the poem. I encourage you to check out the entire poem because it was a poem that Maya Angelou wrote to our nation in that time. We are living, as we know, in a very different time. But she wrote this, and they're words that really speak to, again, where we are. It was in the moments after COVID took over that I began to think about those songs, Wade in the Water, about those folks who sang in my childhood, about Bessie Jones, or, singing, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road." The assurity of community connection and responsibility. Maya Angelou was writing out of that connection. The words that she was inspired to write and the words that I so often in my own work are inspired to share come from that legacy. She writes, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour builds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space for new steps of change. Here, on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out. Upon me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country. No less to Midas than the mendicant, no less to you now than to the mastodon then. Here on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the grace to look up and out, into your sister's eyes, into your brother's face, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. We will not rest till the storm is over. We will not lay this burden down. We will keep each other strong. We will love and carry on till we stand all together on solid ground. We will not rest till the storm is over. We will not lay this burden down. We will keep each other strong. We will love and carry on till we stand all together on solid ground. As I was isolated in my living room in my house in Middleburg, New York, I saw, as I did online performances, the faces of people around the world who came on those screens that we got so used to seeing ourselves in those little boxes. I saw the anguish, the frustration, the fear. I felt that myself. But I went back into those songs and back into those stories and that legacy, and out of me came this song. It came out of the experience of removing myself, or trying every day to remove myself from the distractions, from the narratives that are fed to us. It reconnected me to a community, to several communities of people who recognized in that moment that on pause, we had the power to hit the reset button. And reset we did. One of the ways we reset is through a program that continues to this day. It's called the Daily Antidote. It's a little program that was started by a woman, and actually by the Washington Rebels group. A woman named Jo Rassi and several others decided that what they would do was they would gather people online every day at noon, and they would offer one song and perhaps a little conversation, and people could gather from wherever they were and just chime in. You could have your camera on or off, and we would sing that song. They asked song leaders to sing a song that people could sing. And they've been doing that now for over 540 days. From all around the world, they gather. One of the others was, of course, with my organization, the Living Legacy Project, which in normal times takes people on a journey on the civil rights path in the South. And there we experience the lessons, again, about community accountability and responsibility, and of slowing things down so that we can see truth as it really is in each other. Well, we went online and also began to program for people to see. So in that moment, I experienced the inspiration of a new song. I know that you're weary. We all feel the pain. Sometimes the actions of the world will try your soul again, but I believe there's a better day, and it's coming our way. That's why we're raising our voices as we work today. All around us there's hatred. All around us there's fear. Violence touches our lives, and the message is clear. We mourn our martyrs. In our hearts they'll stay. Then we'll sing, we shall overcome, and go on our way. We will not rest till the storm is over. We will not lay this burden down. We will keep each other strong. We will love and carry on till we stand all together on solid ground. So I wish for you, I hope for you, I share with you in this opportunity to make that reset transition and to recognize the hope that we see in each other's faces, as I was once again shown last night by folks who didn't have to stop. As I see in the faces of children as I tour and perform in schools, and I see the light that is there of hope and possibility. As I recall in myself the transplant that made my new life possible. And I thank you for all that you are doing. And as they say, hallelujah for what you will do. Thank you.
I'm going to go a little bit off script. They do want me to follow the script because they have to edit this eventually to exactly an hour for the radio broadcast.
Well, I made that easy, didn't I?
However, I'll bet they can edit as they need to. If we could, we're going to take a few questions still from the audience, and I'll bet, even though I have to still read the script that ends the program officially, I'll bet after that, if we stuck around, I'll bet Reggie might do one more song if we applauded pretty hard. So, can we go off script? Right. So, thank you, Reggie, for your insightful thoughts on finding hope in a 5-minute world. We have time for a few questions from the audience. For those watching virtually, you may continue to submit questions using the live comments section on your YouTube, or send them to our email at monlyceum@gmail.com. While the ushers collect the cards, let me begin by asking you this, Reggie. What do you think at this point in your life? You've been around this world a lot. What do you think leads to real change for individuals and for society?
I think real change comes from relationship. I'm struck by the fact that we, for years, in looking at the variety of things that we are working on and have worked on in the past and certainly need to work on in the future, that so many folks thought at first education was the important thing, that if we make people aware, if we educate them, if we give them information. And I have seen over the course of my life and my work that some of the most educated people are capable of the most horrendous things. So what changes that information into action and compassion and all of those things? What changes our relationship to the world is the relationships that we have. And I think I have seen time and time again also in connections with people who don't perhaps agree with me. If I encounter someone with whom I have a philosophical disagreement or whatever, I have seen change happen, but not because I took some training from the National Coalition Building Institute years ago. Sherry Brown and her organization has worked with any number of communities around the world. And I was struck by something that they said on the first day, because I went to training and then I went to another training and then I went to become a trainer. I thought that that would be a great way to make a living. Oh yeah. Went back to music very quickly. What they said was, we're not bringing you in as trainers to give people information to change their minds, because we can't change people's minds. They said, what we will eventually do is we will arm you with information, but we will also give you skills to create an atmosphere in which people and groups build relationships. And in those relationships, we'll have an opportunity to see each other, hear each other, and then perhaps change will take place. And damn if they weren't right. So I think it's relationship. And we know how difficult relationships can be. So it is the fortitude to stay within relationships and be open to the difficulty of maintaining them. I think that really makes lasting change in the world.
So if we don't get to your questions, there will be a chance to talk with Reggie afterward at the reception as well. One of our people asks, when local choirs and choruses sing spirituals, often the directors insist we sing them like a Bach cantata. And they say if we sing with emotion, it's cultural appropriation. What do you think?
Well, the whole point of experiencing music from other cultures is to tap into what it is that is special about those cultures. And generally, where that power lies is in the emotion. So it's not about mimicking the emotion, and I understand where they're going with that, but the idea, and there's so much that goes into that, so much history about appropriation and so much history about people taking material and songs and art and all kinds of things from other cultures and using them for their own gain. But that really is one of the bases of change in the world, is to experience the real connection, the emotional connection between a culture that is not your own. And so I think you should experience that in as full a way as you can. Now, having said that, we also realize that we all come from different cultures, sometimes that crossover is not all that easy. So I was in Germany actually doing a series of concerts with a German gospel choir. And they were amazing, 160 voices, and they listened to gospel music. And there's such a love for gospel in Europe anyway, but in Germany in particular, and they were just ready to let it go. But we were singing one of the songs, I think by Andre Crouch, and actually it's by someone else, but soon and very soon we are going to see the King. And they instantly went into soon and very soon we are going to see the King. And their director had them primed for that, and I was able to endure it for a verse or two. And then I just said to him, could we stop for a second? But I just essentially talked about the difference in inflection, the difference in power, and where that song comes from. The very basis of the song is not precision. It's the same thing with the spirituals, only it went into gospel. And we had just a chat about that, and I said, so we are not going to see the King. We ain't going anywhere. We're going to see the King. And it was a fascinating, they got it. And then slowly but surely, as we sang it over 4 concerts, I felt them sliding back into their German sensitivity. But they understood, and beating it to death was not going to change who they are. And that wasn't the point. So I couldn't be in less agreement with those directors.
All right, so again, slightly off script. Let me read the formal closing that they need for the radio broadcast, but I'll bet after that, if you applauded hard enough, I'll bet Reggie would lead us in one last song. I suspect. But let's get this taped for the broadcast. Thank you again, Reggie, for sharing your time and expertise with us this morning. We hope you have enjoyed today's live broadcast of the Monadnock Summer Lyceum. Thank you, all of you, for your support of our 2022 season. And please join us next week to hear Joyce Maynard talking about the story only you can tell. And now, please join us for an informal reception in the parish hall through the door to my right. There you'll have the opportunity to engage in further conversation with Reggie, enjoy some cold drinks. Please respect social distancing, and we thank you all very, very much.
A song that I wrote years ago for a conference that was sponsored by the Omega Institute and the Open Center in New York. The conference was called In the Shelter of Each Other, coined from an Irish phrase, in the shelter of each other the people live. Call and response. In the shelter of each other, in the shelter of our lives, we are open, we are dreaming, we are hopeful, we are wise. Try that again. In the shelter of each other, in the shelter of our lives, we are open, we are dreaming, We are hopeful. We are wise. You know that many times the weight of the world crashes in. We feel angry and afraid. We start to lose our sense of hope, our sense of direction. Isolation, we have learned, will not bring much in return if we truly cannot learn to live as one. Right in the shelter of each other, in the shelter of our lives, we are open, we are dreaming, we are hopeful, we are wise. You know that many times the pain of the world crashes in. We feel broken and betrayed. We start to lose our sense of joy, our sense of connection. And though our history remains, well, it's our actions we must change. If we hope to heal this planet, you know that we must stand right in the shelter of each other, in the shelter of our lives. Yeah, we are open, we are dreaming, we are hopeful, we are wise. Here we go. Right in the shelter of each other, right in the shelter of our lives. We are open, we are dreaming, we are hopeful, we are wise, we are wise, we are wise.
Reggie Harris.